Hey, my lovely goal-getters. Welcome to the Moms Making Money Show. I'm your host, Amie Pederson, business mentor and confidence coach for the emerging boss mom. It's my mission to help amazing women just like you up-level yourself and your business because you are meant for more than wiping boogers and folding laundry. I'm also a wife, mother, urban farmer, influencer, green juice enthusiast, and an unapologetic lover of cowboy boots. I can't wait to help you grow your business by sharing my tips, tricks, proven business strategy, experience, and incredible guests. Hang on tight and enjoy the show. Today's episode is brought to us by our friends over at Sunbasket. Sunbasket is hands down my favorite home meal delivery kit. I first started using Sunbasket several years ago. They were the first people to use a paleo meal kit, and they have done so many great things to customize their meal plans and their meals to fit your dietary needs, whether you're a vegan, vegetarian, keto, paleo, or you just need a little bit of help thinking about what's for dinner. Every single meal that I had from these guys was amazing. It was so delicious. And it actually got me to eat things that I would have never thought about eating. And I just love not having to think about what I'm going to eat for dinner every single night. These guys send everything you need pre-measured, ready to go, and make amazing, delicious meals that my entire family loves. So as a busy working mom, it makes such a huge difference to be able to give my family quality organic meals that are tasty and new and fun and exciting. And I don't even have to go to the grocery store to buy the ingredients. They send them right to my doorstep. Everything is just how I need it, and it's delicious. So if you go to amiepederson.com/sunbasket, you will be able to get your savings on your first 3 orders. It's going to be a total of $80 over your first 3 months. And you guys, that is a smoking deal. So be sure you hop on over and grab your first box. Again, it's amiepederson.com/sunbasket. All right, everybody. I have a very special guest today. And I say special because we were having a conversation on just a general, not really much to do with business thread in a Facebook group that we both belong to. And we got on the topic of how many moms homeschool. And our guest today talked about unschooling. And right then and there, because I'm so all over the place with my children's education, like they go to a small, like super tiny, small private school right now, but that ends at 6th grade. And there's no private school near me that I could send them to that doesn't also have a religious emphasis that I'm aware of. And so, my husband and I have talked about homeschooling. We've talked about charter schooling. We've talked about, a ton of different options. We've talked about, is that even something that I am mentally, emotionally capable of? And so when I saw, hey, we unschool our kids, I was like, yep, I'm having you on the show. And here we are just a few days later. And I wanted to bring you guys Kelly Mahalak, and she is an unschooling boss mom. So Kelly, I'm going to turn it over to you. Why don't you give us a little bit of background on you and what got you from, that mindset of, when your kids are about to start school to the mindset of we are like diehard unschoolers. And then we'll talk about what unschooling is.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. I am excited to be here with you and to talk about this. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. And actually, I don't have tons of opportunity to talk about it in this way. So I was really excited for you to invite me onto your show and jump in here and kind of share my experience as a homeschooler and as a radical unschooler is what we kind of call ourselves. Which this actually feels a little bit strange for me almost, because I feel like I'm coming out of the closet a little bit in some ways. Because radical unschooling is like so on the like far left progressive side of homeschooling, I guess it would be. that like, it's kind of something, there's a joke in the unschooling community that like the answer when somebody asks you about your kid's schooling is like, pass the green beans. And you just don't talk about it because people that don't understand it tend to have really strong opinions about it because of a lack of understanding. So it's exciting for me to come and help create a better understanding about unschooling and what it is and how it works, so that that way people can get a feel for different ways to educate. Because I'm a firm believer that there's like no right or wrong way really to educate your kids. It's really about what works for you, for your individual family units, and for your kids individually. And that was something way back when, let's see, we are entering our 8th year of homeschool right now. And so my daughter was, she had to be about 3.5. So she was getting to that place where me and my husband at the time were divorced now. We're going like, okay, so what are we going to do? Are we going to put her in like 3-year-old preschool, or are we going to wait and do 4-year-old preschool? Are we not going to do preschool, right? Like, what are the options? So it was about that time with our first child that this was coming up, what we were going to do. And I had some friends that homeschooled, and honestly, I kind of made fun of them a little bit sometimes, to be completely honest with you. I was like, that's so weird, because my husband went to private parochial school. I went to public school because I grew up in an area where we had some of the best public schools in the state at the time. And we lived in a really good area where like we had great schools. We had tons of blue ribbon schools to send our kid to. So why would we not take advantage of that? Right. And it always just seemed like the obvious thing, right? Because like, that's what you do. You have kids, and then when they're like old enough, you send them to school. And it's just like this blind thing nobody really thinks about until you're there, and then you have to think about it. And then you're like, wait a second, what do we want to do? And I just looked at this baby. We'd had a lot of different changes and adjustments and some kind of like big life events that had happened in our life. And there was just a part of me as a mom that I just like, I was not ready yet to like let my baby go.
Right.
And so I was like, she's just 3. It's fine. I'll teach her numbers and letters at home. That's all it is, right? Anyways, and like play dates. We have plenty of friends. We will have all of the play dates, and we will work on numbers and letters at home. And that was all we really committed to. And so that's what we did. We had play dates so that she could play with other kids, and we learned numbers and letters at home. And she was 3, and it was fine. There's no pressure, right? Because she's 3. Like, you can't mess this up. She's only 3. And so like the next year came around, and we had like the same kind of conversation. Do we want to put her in preschool? And I was like, no, I kind of had so much fun doing that with her. Like being really, really intentional about my time with her. And I was a stay-at-home mom at this time. I wasn't working at all. And so that was really, it was fun for me. I enjoyed that one-on-one time, because at this time there was just still this one child. And so we chose to do it again. But this time we bought a curriculum, a preschool curriculum. So I went online and found my thing at the recommendation of some friends, those homeschool friends I used to make fun of. They recommended curriculum to me. And so, because now I'm not making fun of them. Now I'm joining their group, and we're having play dates.
Isn't that how it always goes? Like that whole saying, first they'll say, what is it? First they'll ask you why you're doing it. Then they'll ask you how.
Yeah, exactly. I totally didn't understand that. And then I was like, hey, want to teach me all about homeschooling? Because I don't get this, but I think I might kind of want to. And of course they were like, yes, obviously, because I'm not the first person who has done this, right? Who has been like, why are you doing that? And then been like, teach me your ways, Jedi Master. Because that's just how it is.
And now here I am asking you the same thing.
Right, because unless you are homeschooled, homeschooling doesn't seem like a natural choice.
Right.
And that's one of the first questions people ask me is, were you homeschooled? And I'm like, no, I went to public school.
Yeah.
Obviously. Have you ever met me? I went to public school.
Yeah. You walked both ways uphill in the snow, right?
Right. Obviously. I was like, my mouth clearly denotes that I went to public school by the language that comes out of this one, trying to keep it under lock for you here and be on my best behavior. But so I got a curriculum, and I started being even more intentional, and we had daily lessons that we did and everything. And she was 4. And so it was really fun and everything. Then when she entered what would be her kindergarten year, I had a new baby, and she was 5 now and much more opinionated. and much less likely to do whatever I told her to do.
Right.
And the struggles began. The power struggle began of my very, very opinionated, strong-willed child who I have been raising for her entire life to question everything, right? Question everything, challenge everything, be strong, don't let anybody like tell you what to do or run over you. Now this is all like biting me in the ass because now she's like, I don't want to do that at 5. I don't want to read that book, Mama. I don't want to do math, Mama. And now I have this new baby, this infant. My second daughter was born in September. Of course, because what better time to have a baby than in the fall, right? When you're starting to get into new homeschooling year, right?
Yeah.
Right. That's why all of my babies from this point on came in the fall so that they could totally throw me and my homeschool year off course. And I have this new baby and I like just don't have the time for this. So I'm like, okay, I go to my homeschool friends. I'm in like what is called a co-op. And a co-op is like any type of group or organization where homeschoolers kind of come together to learn as a group. And so I've enrolled in these co-ops and I'm like sitting there like nursing my newborn baby, like crying about my strong-willed 5-year-old who doesn't want to learn from me and how I'm like a failure of a homeschooler and maybe I got this wrong and maybe I should put her in school. If you homeschool, get used to this cry fest. You will cry all of the time, especially at the beginning, of how you are messing up your kids. You made the wrong decision. You just can't do this. It's too much. It's too hard. Your kids hate you and they won't learn from you. This is it's a common struggle, but it passes.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
Good
it passes. And so I had these women who had teenagers that they had been homeschooling since they had strong-willed 5-year-olds and brand new babies nursing. And they were like, it's okay. You'll get through this. This too shall pass. And I was introduced to a style of homeschooling called Charlotte Mason. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of Charlotte Mason. Charlotte Mason is actually a person. She was an elementary school teacher. And there is an entire like kind of educational theory that she created around what is called living books. There are actually Charlotte Mason schools. And I've always said that if I put my children in school, I would feel most comfortable putting them in a Charlotte Mason school. And that's based off the idea of living books, of instead of sitting a child down and reading them a textbook full of like facts and things that they need to basically memorize to then pass a test, which is sometimes what education feels like.
That's how I feel about public school for sure.
Yes, like public and most like pretty standard, probably like Catholic parochial schools and things like that. It's like, here's all the information you need to know. You're going to be tested on this on Friday and then you can forget about it. Right? Like at some point I was able to like pass a test on like the Magna Carta.
Right.
And like answer questions about like British history and like British politics. Now I can't really tell you what the Magna Carta is. I know it's some sort of document.
So, I mean, I guess the question is like rapid fire quiz here. Are you smarter than a 5th grader?
Right. Probably not. But like here's the thing. That's the thing about homeschooling and unschooling that challenges you is what do you define as smart? What do you define as intelligent? Because if knowing what year the Magna Carta was written and exactly what kind of political document it is, and who signed it and like all of this stuff is what you consider smart, then no, I'm not smarter than a 5th grader. Right.
And I don't know that either. And
how often does that come up in my everyday life?
It has come up 0 times in my life until today.
0 times in my life since I took that test in 5th grade or whatever it was, and I could answer all of the questions. 0 times has that come up. And not just because it's British history and I live in the United States. Even a lot of United States history has never come up for me in my life since I took a test on it.
Yeah. When my husband was studying for his citizenship exam a couple years ago, I was like, oh, I got this. I know about this. I'm American. I'm as American as they get. And then I was like, I don't know all this. Like, I don't know how many people are in the house or, like, I was like,
Right, exactly. How many adults can tell you like how many representatives there are in the House of Representatives?
Right.
How many people can tell me off of the top of their head what the 18th Amendment to the Constitution is?
Not many.
Right, exactly. But here's the thing. We live in an age of information where like everybody carries a tiny 4-inch computer in their hand with a thing called Google.
Mm-hmm.
So if for some reason I am playing, let's say, Jeopardy or some sort of game show, or, you know, in a bar argument with a friend over like Tuesday trivia, I can Google it.
Right.
And so like being able to take in this information just for the sake of saying that you learned it so you can pass the test on Friday and then throw it away and basically forget about it for the rest of your life until it comes up on Tuesday trivia at the bar when you're 25. Right? And that's the next time you needed to learn it, to know this from 5th grade on. Like, is that really what we're measuring education on, is our ability to pass tests? And so Charlotte Mason is like an educational style that relies not on texts and facts and information, but on learning through something called living books and through story. So instead of reading about the Revolutionary War, you would read novels and books about people during the Revolutionary War, because you're more likely to actually retain the information when you have stories, right? This is why we market and sell and teach the way we do in our businesses and everything, is people connect to story. People connect to other people's lived experiences. And so I can remember a whole lot more facts about something that I read, a time period maybe, if I read a novel that was set in that time period, than if I just learned facts long term, because I'll remember the novel, I'll remember the story. And so Charlotte Mason is based off of reading on books. So we kind of slid over, and it's a lot of nature play, which is something that is very important to me, is being out in nature and learning from like the world around you. So that was kind of the gateway drug for me into unschooling.
I really love that. And here's the other thing too, that I think a lot of people either don't know or just don't, like realize, is that humans are storytellers. We've been storytellers since the beginning of time, in every language. And, like you go back to like the caveman era, and they're telling stories with the drawings and the pictures and the images and the writings that they have on the wall.
Yeah.
And that's the way, you hear about legends and you hear about that kind of thing. And that's the way we've always, for tens of thousands of years or however many years, that's the way we pass down information, is through a story. So that's why it's still important in a business, but it's also why we remember it so much better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And it's just the way that like our brains work, is because that's kind of how we're hardwired as human beings, to share through our culture, to pass down. Because before there was written language, before there were books, before there was Google, we relied on word of mouth, on sharing things from one generation to another. And that was done through story.
Right.
And it was done through lived experience, through taking your children along with you and letting them live the experience and live life alongside of you. Not like shoving them in a classroom with 30 other children of their peers and getting them to recite facts at you. Right. Long term, it actually does not work as well. And so I read a study. I can't for the life of me remember who it is, but if you take some of the information I give you in the paraphrase of it and you Google it, it will pop right up, because it's fairly well known. But it was a teacher when, like back, I think in the early 1900s, maybe, that was like one-room schoolhouse teaching. And she had new classes of kindergartners coming in. She had, like, let's say, for example, she had 10 new kindergartners coming in. She divided them in two, so 5 and 5, and she taught half of the group traditional math curriculum. Right? So we're talking about math here. So she started with them, okay, these are your numbers that you're going to learn. This is addition, this is subtraction, this is multiplication, this is division, right? Took them through traditional math curriculum that you would learn in school. The other half, she did what was called natural math. Yeah. Natural math is not sitting down and doing worksheets of addition problems, but actually seeing math in your world. because math shows up in baking. Math shows up when you're playing a game and you need to deal cards out. Math shows up when you are playing marbles. Math shows up everywhere in our lives, and not just addition. There is complex calculus and multiplication and algebra that happens that 5-year-olds can understand in the natural world. They don't realize that their brain is doing equations, but they can get it. Put the numbers on the paper and they're going to be like, what? But in the natural world, when they see it, they can understand it. And so she did natural math with half of the group, traditional curriculum math with the other half. In 4th grade, she began to teach the natural math group traditional curriculum. And at the beginning of 4th grade, and by the end of the school year, so in 9 months, the children who had done natural math were completely caught up and tested higher than the children who had been doing curriculum the entire time.
Wow.
Because they were exposed to natural math concepts in their world. And by the time they were in 4th grade, which is what, like 9?
Right.
Their brains were more matured, and so they grasped concepts easier. You don't have to teach a child that 1 + 1 = 2 by sitting them down and making them write it out 100 times.
Right.
They will naturally grasp that information from the world around them and from having to add things together. Can you hand me 2 apples?
Mm-hmm.
You know, things like that. And what was a real game changer for me was when my daughter was 5 and 6-ish. So right when we were starting to shift to this Charlotte Mason stuff, I was starting to kind of ease up a little bit in my curriculum and really allow her to learn more from the world around us. Also, hello, brand new baby, remember? So like, I'm a little bit stressed. I'm a little bit stressed, and I can't even with it right now, right? Let's be honest. And all of a sudden, we would be driving in the car and she would read things on signs. And I was thinking to myself, I have not been working on reading with you. I should have been, but I wasn't.
My son did that for me one time too. I was like,
and I was like, right. We were at the store and she like read something about like carrots being on sale, and there was no picture of carrots that went with the word. And it wasn't like buy the carrots. And I was like, how did you know that? And she's like, because there's carrots in Minecraft.
Oh.
And I was like, oh my God, she learned how to read playing a video game.
Well, and my story is kind of funny because my son was looking through like the TV channels, like the guide, and the word Friday came up and he goes, look, Mom, Friday, we should watch this. I'm like, we are not watching that movie together. For 5, but he knew the word. And I was like, good for you, buddy, you know, because he had just turned 5. He hadn't started kindergarten or anything yet. And I was like, oh, I was like so proud.
Yeah, because they pick it up. Yeah. They really just do. And like I never, ever, ever taught my daughter, my oldest daughter, formal reading. Like we never sat down and did like hooked on phonics or like reading lessons or anything really. Cause I started noticing that she was just picking things up and I was like, well, we'll see how far we can take this. Right.
Right.
And now she's 11 and she has 4 books on her nightstand. She loves reading. And so she's like me. She's always reading like 7 books at a time. She's currently in the middle of Black Beauty.
Ooh.
And Grimm's Fairy Tales.
Oh, I love that.
Because she's 11 and a half. And so she's starting to like some spooky things. And so I was like, well, you want some like spooky, weird, messed up stuff that maybe is like, you know, like, cause she's like saying like, I want to go watch It. Can I watch It? And I'm like, I don't know about that, but like, we can read some Grimm's Fairy Tales. I'll meet you in the middle.
I'm like, that gives me anxiety just even thinking about the commercial for that movie.
I know. I'm like, why do you want to see this? I'm terrified. My ex-husband texted me yesterday and was like, you know that one haunted house where like it's like 4 stories and like most people don't make it all the way through and they like touch you and stuff? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, our kid wants to go to that. And I was like, no. And he was like, why? And I was like, I don't know. And so like, this is the thing about homeschooling and unschooling specifically, which I can like kind of define for you in a minute if you want. Yes. But it's really challenging your status quo, and it challenges you as a parent more than anything to let go of the control.
Yeah.
So as what I consider to be a radical unschooler. Now you could Google this, you could go talk to radical unschooling experts, and you might get a different definition. I'm not like the authority on unschooling. I didn't create it. It was something that kind of fell into my lap that I learned more and more about and listened to podcasts on and everything, and kind of found myself there. But unschooling is kind of like the opposite of schooling, right? Obviously. So it's not that it's using no curriculum. It's not forcing your children to do curriculum. If your children want to do curriculum, that's their prerogative. That's their life. Right. I have a child who loves workbooks. She loves writing things. She loves doing the worksheets. And so I let her do the worksheets. I get them for her because that's what she wants to do. But unschooling is really about like returning to that natural, innate sense within us to want to learn. Humans are born natural learners, right? Even as adults, don't you find yourself being like, oh, the Kennedy assassination is so fascinating. I'm going to watch 17 documentaries on the History Channel and take out 40 books from the library and read all about it.
I say that I'm like a serial student. Like I just can't stop learning.
Yes. And we all are. We all are. It is born in us to want to learn, and unschooling is trusting that human instinct. The reason why we forget that we all have that born into us is because so many children have education and learning like kind of perverted and crushed within them while they go through the school system.
Well, and it's not made to be like a fun experience. It's like one of those,
right?
Sit down, do what I tell you, get it done, take the test and get a good grade. And for me, like, you know, I did some research on standardized testing and I decided, like I said, my son just started kindergarten like 2 weeks ago, but I already made the decision, even at their Montessori school, like I'm opting out of the standardized test because I don't want my son to feel like, you know, and having experience like with NLP and different types of like actual like mind and body functions, like I don't want him to have that test anxiety. Sure, I could NLP him to not have test anxiety, but I don't want him to think that his worth is measured on how he does on a standardized test. Because I remember being stressed out about those tests, even like, and I did really well. I always did really well. But, you know, you leave and you have that feeling of uncertainty. And then it's like, what does it tell you? What does it actually tell you about nothing? It doesn't tell you that your students are actually smart or actually not, or, you know, that whole, you know, what is intelligence thing kind of comes.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that somebody who is highly intelligent, you think about somebody like Albert Einstein, was a horrible test taker. And he was a freaking genius.
Right. Exactly. And that's the thing is like for most people, I would say that the experience of schooling and learning is full of pressure. It's not fun. It's something that you have to do, that you're forced to do, whether you feel like it or not, every single day, 5 days a week for 9 months of the year, typically in the US. You know, regardless of how you feel, what kind of mood you wake up in, there's no kind of like respect for your autonomy as a human. You're shoved into these areas with people that you have no choice over who you're spending your time with or anything like that. And there's so much pressure to perform, and your worth for your like 12 years of schooling. Well, I mean, let's be real. Really, it's like 20 years of schooling once we add in all of the degrees you need now to function in the world. But, you know, for all of these years, your worth is wrapped up in your ability to perform on a test.
Right.
And if you can't perform on the test, then you don't get the good grade. And what happens? You don't get to go out for ice cream. You don't get to ride in the limo and go to McDonald's. You don't get to, right? Because they offer all these like weird, insane, strange, like, you know, like opportunities for kids who do well. I'm kind of feeling
tipped now. Because
that used to be a thing. And when I was in school, is that like you would do like, I don't know, I think that was if you sold magazines though. But I remember there was something, and you got a limo ride to McDonald's, and like my best friend got it and I didn't, and I felt like shit.
Right.
You know? And then like, if you don't test well for all of those years, then you're not going to be able to get into the college. And your whole life is going to go downhill, and you're going to have to work at Walmart. And everything's going to be a mess.
College and
well, right, but they don't tell you that. They make you feel constantly like, and so it's just it's this striving, and you're learning a whole bunch of stuff that you don't care about. Because who really cares about the Magna Carta?
No one.
To tie it back. I mean, maybe there's a few people, and that's good for them, and they should study it. But for the rest of us who don't care, why should we have to spend 2 weeks studying it, right? So that we can pass a test again and then forget about it until bar bingo or whatever.
And it's funny because a lot of people, you know, like they don't teach practical life stuff in most schools. But I do remember that I learned in the 7th grade how to balance a checkbook. Like we got these little fake checkbooks, and my math teacher taught us. And I don't think they do that anymore.
I mean, probably because nobody has a checkbook anymore.
True.
But yes, I get what you are saying.
Right. Like when we were coming up, that was a practice.
That was the thing. Right. Like, talk to me about taxes, and not just when we're talking about the Boston Tea Party. Right.
Right.
Talk to me about like real taxes. Talk to me about how to get my credit score up so that I can buy the car that I want. Talk to me about how to be responsible with credit cards and be responsible with debt. Talk to me about like the real kinds of things that matter in life. Talk to me about how to be emotionally sound. Talk to me about how to be spiritually healthy. Talk to me about the things that are actually going to help me in my life, not quizzing me on like the War of 1812, because unless I'm a professor or I work at a museum about the War of 1812, like that's not going to matter to me. Right. And so unschooling really just goes back to relying on that innate desire to want to learn and know things, and allows your children to follow their interests. A great example of someone who is allowed to do this is Billie Eilish. Whose mother decided to and people homeschool for the weirdest reasons when they start. She decided to homeschool because she heard that the Jonas Brothers were homeschooled.
Well then.
No joke. Right. And she was like, oh, well, if it's good enough for the Joe Bros, it's good enough for me. And so she decided to do it. I think mostly because she recognized that both of her children were incredibly musically talented. And the great thing about homeschooling in any way is that you really are given so much extra time in your life. Because even if you're doing school at home, that's what like I like to say, there's a difference between homeschooling and school at home. It's not that one's better than the other, they're just very different. So something like K-12, or if you're really trying to reproduce what happens in a classroom at home, your school at home. Homeschooling kind of takes its own flavor and bent of its own, because you're really like the home part comes first.
Right.
But think about how much time is wasted in a day when you have 30 to 35 kids in a classroom and you have to take a math test. And you pass, how long does it take to pass out the worksheet, to explain it to everybody, to answer everybody's questions, to let everybody finish the test, right? Because you're going to have one kid that finishes it in 7 minutes and then one kid that takes 17. So then you have that kid sitting around for 10 minutes doing nothing. You have to wait for everybody to finish, then you have to collect it, right? And so this math test is taking 45 minutes, when if you just have one kid taking that math test at your kitchen table, it's going to take like 15.
Right.
And so you're like double to tripling the amount of time it takes to do everything. So so that was one of the advantages that I think that Billie's mom saw, was that she could really allow her kids to spend way more time on the things that were important to them, music, and they had much more freedom to think outside of the box and to be who they were created to be. And this is what I find to be the most important part in my decision in homeschooling and unschooling especially, is that radical unschooling gives me the opportunity to create an environment that encourages my children to be who they were created to be, not to try and mold them into the person I think they should be.
Right. Agree.
And so that was the most important part for me, was like, I get to go to my kids and say, like, let's go to the library. What are you interested in? What's piquing your interest these days? And so we did this just a few weeks ago. My 7-year-old said apples. It's fall. We live in Michigan. It's apple orchard season. And she wants to know all the things about apples. So we took out 100 books, not really 100, but probably like 25. So it feels like 100 carrying them home. Like 25 books on apples. Books just where apples were main characters in like children's novels, right? Like juvenile picture books about apples talking to each other. Nonfiction books about the different parts of apples and apple trees and how they grow and how you grow an orchard. Books about Johnny Appleseed. We're doing crafts together when she wants to, using apples. We made like apple dolls, which are the creepiest thing in the world. I don't recommend it. When you cut an apple, you like peel an apple and then you like carve a face into it. And this is like what they used to do in like the Depression. And then they would like use that as like the head for a doll using like old sewing scraps and everything. And it's literally the creepiest thing you'll ever see in your life. But like, we do that. And then we're going to go to the apple orchard. And that's like a field trip for us. And so we're just like because she's interested in it. So we're just using resources that we can come across, cutting apples in half, looking at the seeds, things like that. And I'm letting her ask the questions. And when we don't know something, we're not relying on a curriculum book to walk us through the lesson on apples. Like, I just Google or YouTube something and find the answer, because it really is that easy.
Right.
And so like, that's what I'm doing with her. And then my younger daughter is 5. And so she kind of just comes along for the ride in whatever that we do. As long as she's like connected to my hip, she's good. And she's 5, so I'm not worried about it.
Right.
Because the compulsory age for schooling in Michigan is 6. So I don't really even have to worry about her on any level. My oldest daughter is 11 and a half, and it's fall again. And so she's like kind of diving into those Halloween vibes, which I love. She's still my kid, that like the second it drops below 80, she's like, Halloween is here.
Right.
Can we decorate the house? Let's start making my costume. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. But so she is reading Grimm's fairy tales. She has a couple of scary stories to tell in the dark. Do you remember those? I don't know how old you are, but they were like the best ever. And she's like, oh my God, I've heard of these. They're legendary. And I was like, I know, they're so good. So she's going through and reading that kind of stuff. And, she's watching a lot of YouTube videos on haunted houses and haunted ships and everything. The other day she was talking to me about the Queen Mary.
Oh, that's
and I was like,
cool.
What? Right.
And she's come out for a visit and we'll go to the Queen Mary.
Oh, do you know what that is? I was like, I don't know what that is. Tell me all about the Queen Mary. And she's like, yeah, it's super cool. It's haunted. It's this thing. And she's explaining it all to me. And this is stuff she's learning off of YouTube. And she's so into it. And she's going to remember the stuff because she's obsessed with it.
Well, yeah. I mean, you think about anything. If you're interested in it, then you're going to retain it because you basically become obsessed with it. Right. I do that, I was doing that earlier today. I was learning about these because I'm totally into essential oils and I totally love them.
Yeah.
So I'm like, ooh, this one and that one. And I need all these things. I'm about to spend a small fortune on all these new things that just came out.
Right, exactly. And like you think you're into essential oils or whatever, and it's something that's interesting to you. And then all of a sudden, like one night at 12:30 in the morning now, like midnight has passed and you find yourself like still up on your phone on some like really weird, like random website somewhere reading about like the vibrational frequency of neroli oil and, and what kind of like constituents it's made up of. Right. And you're like totally nerding out and you're not thinking. Like I became really obsessed with quantum physics.
Oh, that's cool.
And like I found myself like laying in bed at noon on a Tuesday, like reading books about quantum physics and about like Einstein and like Tesla and like totally nerding out. And if you had tried to ask me to do that at 16, In high school, I would have been like, yeah, right. Middle finger.
Right. And see, for me, like quantum physics doesn't, like, the only quantum physics stuff that I do anything with is when I watch The Big Bang Theory.
That's so funny. Yeah, but like I'm obsessed. I'm like watching documentaries. I'm reading books. I'm like doing all of these things that I would never do because I'm interested in it. And so like it's allowing your kids to really kind of let their passions lead them and take them like where they will, and then trusting the process. And that's the hardest part, is trusting the process. When your kid has done nothing but play Minecraft for like 4 weeks straight, and you're like, I think I'm failing. You have to keep trusting the process. And actually Minecraft is like a really beautiful way for kids to homeschool and unschool because it teaches them a ton of things. It taught my kid to read. There's math involved. There's geometry involved and spatial. There's architecture. There's all sorts of things that are, and that's the thing. You have to realize that everything is a learning experience. We don't sit at a desk for 7 hours to learn. Everything we do in our life is learning.
True.
And that's like the main thing about unschooling is learning how to foster that environment. Right. Because I think it's a really common practice as parents for us to, you know, when your kid asks questions and you just want to like smother them for asking so many questions. Like, why are you talking so much?
Why?
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, shut up already. I'm trying to do something. Right? And trying to do something is like you're on Facebook, right? Right. But you're like, stop asking me questions about that. And like, that's kind of like our knee-jerk reaction, is to be like, okay, I've had enough now. And to really foster that environment of self-led learning is to allow your children to continue asking questions until they have exhausted their curiosity. So it's being willing to show up and answer the 77th question. Right. When you want to strangle them and you want to tell them to go away and go play Barbies or do something. And allowing them to keep asking why. And when you don't have the answers, partnering with them to find them, whether it be through library books, through YouTube videos, through encyclopedias, through website, through Googling. And your kids will learn a lot if you allow them to.
I think that's super true. And one of the things that I like to do is we do things like, so my son is super into art, which makes sense because I'm super into art, but he also loves getting in the kitchen. So we make it like a math project. Yeah. You know, we measure the things out, and I'm thinking to myself, like, this is the best way to learn fractions, is with measuring cups.
Totally. Let's double this recipe.
Yeah.
Or let's half this recipe.
Yeah.
And so then when you're like, what's 1/2 of 1/3? If I need 1/3 a cup of flour, what's 1/2 of 1/3? And then you're like, crap, I don't even know that.
I'm like, this is about halfway up the measuring cup.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so it's instead of saying halfway up the measuring cup, make them figure that out. 1/2 of 1/3 is 1/6. So how many tablespoons or teaspoons or whatever is that? Like, make them giving them the opportunity and walking them through that, taking your time to move slower through your day so that they can learn. Right. It's taking it back to, this is how they used to do things. Yep. This is how everything used to be done, was you were taught through real life experience. That's what, you know, when boys were 14, like, what did they do? They like put their little hard hats on and they went to like the coal mines with their dads and they learned how to mine the coal or do whatever. Like, when you came of age, you started going to work with your parents. You started doing things. Right. And that's really how we're meant to learn, is through our experiences, through getting our hands dirty. You know, when I've always said, like, would my kids rather like learn about worms in a book and seeing pictures, or would they rather go out after a rain and find the earthworms and hold them and touch them, hold them, touch them in their hands, cut them open and look inside of them.
Yeah.
You know, like what's going to be more, and it creates these beautiful memories, not only as a family unit and for you and your kids, but like for them, that like your kid's never going to forget that day you went out and you found earthworms after the rain. They're going to totally forget about a page about earthworms in a science book.
Right.
You know, so I get that people get really freaked out about it though, because it's like, well, how are they going to learn about Martin Luther King Jr.? How are they going to learn about, you know, how are they going to get into college? How are they going to be socialized? So the first thing everybody asks me is socialization. I'm like, for real, people, have we not gotten beyond this? Because at the end of the day, I'm like, dudes, like my kids talk to so many more people. Tell me what exactly is socializing about throwing your kid into like a sardine can with the same 30 kids for 12 years.
Right.
Like my kids have to talk and interact to people of all different ages. When we go to our homeschool groups, it's K through 12.
Well, and not only that, but like my son plays sports also.
Right, exactly. We are in sports. All of my kids do competitive cheerleading. So they're in sports, which again is all ages and everything. And so like my daughter's on a team that ranges from like 9 to 14. Mm-hmm. She's 11. She's right in the middle. So it's not just like the same age or the same kids. So she has to learn how to interact with younger kids. She has to learn how to interact with older kids. You know, we go to the grocery store and they talk to people. Right. Oh, the horror that we go places and they talk to other humans and that they're involved in things. My oldest daughter goes to a youth group, to a local church, you know, and there's so many other ways. There's homeschool groups, there's co-ops. We do field trips with other homeschoolers. They have friends. Yeah. Like I don't have them like locked up in my house in a prayer closet like Carrie, like learning telekinesis. We might learn telekinesis, but it will not be in a scary. I'm kidding. If that's what interests them, I will totally let them dive into that. Maybe not on a Carrie level, but you know, right. My one kid went through a phase where she was really into like Bigfoot and like the Kraken and like mythological creatures basically. And so like we basically spent like an entire month trying to figure out if Bigfoot was real and like watching YouTube footage of people who thought they saw Bigfoot.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right. And like, why not? She learned and picked up so much from that.
Yeah, I like that. So I guess my question is that probably some of the listeners are thinking is like, how do, or maybe do they get any sort of like grading system or grading feedback, or how does that work? Like, is it approved by your district? Like all those things, right?
Okay, so this is a hard question to answer because every state has different laws when it comes to homeschooling, because education is one thing that is governed by your state, not by the country. Okay, so it's not governed at a federal level, it's governed at a state level. So you, first of all, need to check with your state. I don't necessarily really advocate for HSLDA, which is the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. Okay. But so you can actually become a member of HSLDA, and if you run into any legal issues, they will defend you as a member. You'll get like a free homeschool lawyer through them, should you ever need one. Oh, nice. It's very uncommon to need one. A lot of people do really like that. It's not something that I really feel like I need to do because I live in Michigan, which is considered a green state for homeschooling, which means we're one of the most lenient states in the country. Oh, I like that. Right. You're in California, right?
Yeah. Well, they are trying to make homeschooling.
So you're like a red state.
Yeah. I don't know what that means, green or red, or like.
It means you're in the worst. You have a lot of restrictions around you.
Right. And I do, like I said, they're trying to make it illegal to homeschool your kids here. So.
Yes, exactly. And so, like New York, Pennsylvania, those are other states that are considered red states. But so this green, red, and then yellow states, which are kind of like in the middle, you can find this, I believe, on the HSLDA website where they have this map and you can actually go to your state and find the laws. Ah. So it's really important to know your laws and know how to abide and work within them. In Michigan, where I live, the burden of proof of education is on the state.
Got it.
Which means that if anybody ever like called like CPS, right, Child Protective Services, on me and said like, her kids don't go to school, like they're truant, and like they showed up, the government showed up, they couldn't say, prove to me how you school your children. They would have to prove that I'm not schooling my children. So the burden's completely on them. I don't have to keep records. I don't have to announce to my state, to my district, that my children are not in school. Now, this is easy for me because my kids are a little bit off the grid because none of them have ever been in school.
Okay.
If your children are in a school and you want to withdraw them, I always, always, always recommend, even though you are not technically legally required to, submitting a letter of intent to withdrawal to your district and your school. So that way they're accounted for, because if they just don't show up, then they're going to call, they're going to contact people and wonder where your kid is.
Right.
So it's not that it's illegal. It's not that you actually have to technically tell them or anything, because the truant officers or whoever it is that would come to your house, Child Protective Services, you could just say, oh no, I'm choosing to homeschool them. And depending on your state laws, that might just be enough, and they would just leave you at that. But I mean, like, how hard is it to like draft up an email and shoot it off, right? To save yourself the trouble of having to deal with that. So if you're going to withdraw your kids, it's always a really good idea to check out your laws on that, on informing your district, because there are some states where you do have to inform your district. I technically don't have to, but like I said, my kids have always been off the grid. So like no school's missing them. I also there are some states where you have to send in lesson plans at the beginning of the year. Like over the summer, by September 1st, you have to tell them exactly what curriculum you're using, what books, what you're going to be studying, show that it's compliant with the Common Core requirements for your state, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have to keep a portfolio. And then at the end of the year, you have to show proof of your child's work. So you would have to send in tests and projects and things like that.
Oh, gotcha.
So I don't have to do any of that. I have in Michigan, basically the requirements are compulsory age is 6. So between the ages of 6 and 16, I think it is, you have to be teaching your children in 9 main areas: reading, writing, spelling, language arts, math, science, history, geography, and something else.
Gotcha.
I don't know, because I don't remember what I listed. But so there's these 9 main areas and everything. Again, I don't have to prove this to anybody unless I really had to. But because of the way that the laws are worded, and again, because proof of burden is on the state in the state of Michigan, I have the leniency that I can be like, well, like, I mean, we did baking and we doubled the recipe, so that's math. Like, and they can't tell me that it's not. Gotcha. Where my kids are reading books, that's language arts, that's reading. My kids can write, that's spelling. They can text, that's spelling, right? And so there's a certain amount of license I have for creativity that not all states have, because some states actually require you to have a curriculum. And so there are definitely groups for unschooling in every state, and how they work within the laws and the framework to still use their convictions and the homeschool style that they want while abiding by the law. And so when it comes to the legal stuff, I always recommend contacting other homeschoolers and groups, which you can easily do on Facebook. Like you could search like Unschoolers Connecticut. I was in for the longest time an unschooling group in California that was based in California. And how people work within the law to protect themselves and their children.
Okay.
And to not be, negligent. Because there is a fine line. And this is why I joked around about pass the green beans, is a lot of people hear that you're not making your kids sit down and do school every day, and they assume that it's negligence.
And I'm sure that there are some people out there who do fall under that category, because there always is in everything,
Always.
Yeah. So there's always somebody that, spoils the pot type of thing. But
definitely.
But I mean, even if you homeschool, so I know somebody who homeschools and they do it through like a charter school system here in California. And they do, they have a curriculum, they do that curriculum, but she does take her son and does real life implementation of, math. And, even when they're bowling, that becomes a math lesson of, okay, this is how, and even bowling, I think, is kind of hard math, because if you're good, it's hard, because then you're like,
I don't even know how to do bowling math. Once you get into strikes and spares and things like that, like, I'm lost.
Yeah. But, even then they're able to make a lesson out of it that kind of ties back. So I think that's really, really cool. And I'm also, so there's probably some people out there who are probably like, I'm going to throw rocks at these girls, but I am so anti Common Core that, like, I just, I am. I can't wrap my brain around it. It doesn't make sense to me. Whoever decided it was a good idea, they are not my friend today. And I just think it's stupid.
Right. So as a homeschooler that doesn't have to deal with Common Core, I was able to have a unique perspective of it. And my main takeaway from Common Core was with the math, right?
Right.
The math is like insanity. But I kind of secretly loved it after I got over the fact that it was absolute insanity and that we were adding like 17 extra steps to something.
Right.
Right. I mean, I get the concept at the core of it. No pun intended. I understand the concept of why there are extra steps and what that's teaching the kids. But my biggest takeaway was I had always been taught that math was absolute and that it was like completely this finite experience. And I was a crazy person with math. I am not good at math. It was not my strong suit. When I went to high school, we were only required 2 years to graduate, 4 for like pre-college. If you were planning to go to university, universities wanted you to have 4 years. And I was like, I'm going to beauty school. And so I only need 2 years of math to get by and graduate. And so I stopped after my sophomore year when I got a D- in geometry.
Ooh, I didn't love geometry.
And I like slid by the hair of my chinny chin chin with a D- and was like, screw math. I'm never doing it again. Little did I know I was doing it every day. But a lot of the reasons why I failed math is because despite the fact that I could find the right answers, my work was always wrong. And so I would get docked points on my tests and in my homework because my work was wrong. Because there's only one way. You must have stumbled upon these right answers by luck.
Or
because there's only one way, right? Or you cheated because there's only one way to get to this answer. And Common Core came along and said what I knew all along. Math is not as finite as we want to say it is. It's not as absolute. There's always more than one way to do everything. And so that like almost reaffirmed my choice in the way I educate my children, that there's more than one right way. And you can get to the right answer. As long as you get to the right answer, who cares how you got there?
Amen.
And so I choose to let my children find their own path, and I just kind of stand in the background to let them know that I'm here for them when they need me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it, even though they probably drive you nuts with their 20 million questions, I think it's kind of cool to have them with you on a more regular basis.
It is. Well, I'm a single mom too. And so we have 80-20 custody. So they are with me all the time. And I work from home. So we are just all up in each other's business all of the time. We really, really do our lives together. And yeah, there are some days where I'm like, oh my God, go to school and get out of my hair. I would be so much more productive if y'all were gone. Right? Like today they're with their dad. They've been with their dad for 4 days now. And I've gotten so much work done. And I'm like, this would be so rad if I could work like this all the time, uninterrupted and everything. But like at the same time, like I love doing life with them.
Right.
Like we only have so many, you only get 18 years. Like that's not that long. And then you send them away for 13, 14 of those 18 years to school 7 hours a day. And like, I love having that time with my kids. I love having that bond with my kids. I love, not that we don't run into plenty of like friction and getting on each other's nerves,
Right.
and that it doesn't make it difficult for me to be an entrepreneur working from home and to get my work done and adjusting our schedules. You know, but that just means that I get up early enough in the morning that I can be done with my work for the most part by lunchtime. And then I have from lunchtime to bedtime to be with them. And then I work a little bit more after they go to bed because I'm a night owl. So I stay up pretty late too. And I don't need very much sleep to run on. So I stay up and I work a little bit after they go to bed. And then we do it all again the next day. And I get to really be with them, and we get to go on adventures, and we get to learn firsthand, and I get to answer their questions. And
that makes it nice.
Yes, it's a very, very, very nice life. And it works for us. And I get that it doesn't work for everybody. I get that there may be people listening to this that are like, or that have maybe even turned it off by now, because they're like, this chick is crazy. Like, she has lost it. She is irresponsible. Like, right? Like, I get that that homeschooling in general is not for everybody. I really do believe that anybody can do it. It's never, so many moms go, I could never do that. And it's like, yes, you could. You could if you had to. Right. You could if you wanted to. You may not want to. And that's why you could never do it, is because you just don't want to. And that's okay. There's no shame in that. There's no shame. Trust me, I get it. There is no shame in wanting to send your kids away every day so that you can like clean your house or do your work or do whatever it is. There's no shame in loving your job and your work and wanting to go, you know, be outside of the house and have something that's yours that fuels you and expands you.
Right.
Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And I've never understood like the mommy wars of like, you know, oh, you just put your kid in daycare? Like, hell yeah, I put my kid in daycare because I need to breathe. Right. Like, and that's okay, because I really believe whatever is going to make mom to me is like the thermostat of the household.
Yes.
She like sets the temperature. And so like when mom is like the healthiest, happiest, most fulfilled and fueled version of herself, that allows her to be the best mom possible.
Agreed.
And so whatever it is that is going to do that for you is going to be the thing that helps your children thrive. For me, that means not having to wake up and take them to school every day. Because for the longest time, I was like, I swear I just homeschool so I can sleep in and I don't have to deal with school traffic. And that made me a healthier human, you know? Whatever it is that makes you the best version of you is going to help your kids thrive to be the best version of themselves, because you're going to show up for them differently. So if homeschooling is something that super stresses you out, that's not going to be conducive for your kids' learning environment.
Right. Agreed.
You know, it's a really deeply personal decision. And it's one that we always said, you know, my ex-husband and I, we started saying this from the very beginning when we started and we were still married, and we still do now. We have a really, really great co-parenting, like conscious uncoupling type relationship. And we're still very much one big family. And we have always said we do this 1 year at a time. And every year we reevaluate if this still works for each child individually, because there may come a time when one child needs to go to school and the other ones may need to stay at home. It doesn't have to be an across the board decision for all of your children. Is this working for each child individually? And is this working for us as parents and for us as a whole family unit?
Right. Agreed.
You know, and so we look at it from all of these angles, and every single year we decide, do we want to do this again, or do we need to make shifts? And those shifts could be in the way that we are choosing to homeschool in our approach. Do we need to shift into something more structured, into more curriculum, or maybe into a different type of schooling altogether?
Agree.
You know, there's been times where we've had to shift our co-ops and things like that. We were a part of a co-op for a really long time that was religious based. And that was never really an issue until they changed some of their policies to be much more conservatively religious based. And that didn't jive for me. And so I had to make a really hard decision based on my own principles and my own personal beliefs that I didn't want to, that I didn't want to be a part of that group, and so there's always, it's just like anything else in life. You have to constantly reevaluate and see what's working for you, because the point is that for your children and for your family to thrive.
Right. Right. And in a way that you feel comfortable and confident.
Yes. I mean, I think that there's always a sense of incompetence when it comes to homeschooling, to be honest with you. I feel like it's very much the same. Homeschooling, and especially radical unschooling, to me parallels like my entrepreneurial journey so much. So if there's other boss moms out there listening, like, you will get this. Like, this is like a vehicle for your growth in the biggest ways possible. And it is going to call out every single insecurity and fear that you have. But your choice is going to be to feed into those fears and those insecurities and ditch out, or to face them and allow yourself to learn and push through and overcome.
Right.
And so you're always going to have doubt about whether or not you're doing it right, whether or not you're messing your kids up, right? I worry about this all the time, less and less as the years go by, and I learn to trust the process more and more as I see my kids grow up and flourish. But there are so many times over the years where I've been like, oh my God, I don't even know how to really say this without swearing, but I'm going to like, I'm really messing my kids up. Like, I'm totally failing them. I'm not doing anything right. Am I neglecting them? Maybe I'm neglecting them. This is educational neglect, right? And then one of my like unschooling mentors said to me, if you're worried that you might be neglecting your kids, you're not. Because somebody who is truly neglecting their kids would never be worried. A mom who is worried about whether or not she's messing up her kids is a good mom, because a bad mom doesn't care if she's messing up her kids. So if you're worried about it, if you're stressed out about it, you're on the right path and you're doing an okay job.
Yeah.
So just keep going. And I think that that's just part of the process, and it's part of the growth, and part of learning to trust your kids, and part of learning to trust yourself and your instincts, and to get back to that like innate sense of inner guidance and self-trust when it comes to yourself and to your parenting style and your schooling style and your kids, despite what the world and culture is spitting at you every day.
Agree.
And so it's really, there's a deconditioning process you have to go through that in the unschool community. We call it deschooling, which is typically where both parents and children do no school of any kind, no intentional learning of any kind for a period of time.
Oh, wow.
To allow yourself to like deconstruct and like unindoctrinate yourself from the ideas of what school's supposed to look like, and what learning is supposed to look like, and what our measures for success and intelligence are.
Wow.
And so through that deschooling process, you have to learn how to like let it all go, so that way you can kind of like rewild yourself.
Yeah.
And get back to learning how to trust yourself and trust your kids and trust the process of life.
And I think this kind of goes with, being an entrepreneur too, is really just trusting your gut and trusting your instinct, trusting what works for you.
Yes. And here's the thing. Anybody out there who's a good mom, no matter how you school your child, you're like never going to let them get to like the age of 17 illiterate.
Right.
Like you're just not. It's kind of like when like my kids were little and they slept, I bed shared. I co-slept with my kids. People are like, they will never leave your bed. And I was like, well, here's the thing. Like, I'm not going to have a 22-year-old like sleeping in my bed.
Right.
Or, like we even used this process in potty training, where we didn't potty train our kids. We just waited for our kids one day to be like, I want underwear, I'm done. And then that's how it was. All of a sudden one day they were like, screw this. I don't want a diaper. This is uncomfortable. Give me underwear. And they like never had accidents.
Right.
Because we just trusted them to be both physically and developmentally ready to make that process. And sometimes that meant I had a 4.5-year-old that I was throwing pull-ups at saying, change your own damn diaper.
Yeah.
And she would, and she would like pull it off and then put it on, I'd be like, throw it away. And she'd be like, okay. But then like one day, and people would be like, oh my God, that's so ridiculous. And I would be like, look, she's not going to wear a pull-up down the aisle. One of these days, she's going to get sick of this and she's going to ask for underwear.
Right.
And she did, you know? And so it's like trusting that they are where they're supposed to be developmentally, and that like one day they'll just click. And so, yeah, maybe your kid can't read at the age of 4 or 5 or 6 even, right? But like studies have shown that children who learn to read at 4 have no long-term advantage in their reading skills by the age of 7. The kids who learn how to read at 5 and 6 they're all equal by 7. By 2nd grade, they've all equaled out. So there's no long-term advantage over pushing your kid to read through some like infomercial product or whatever, you know, at 1, 2, 3, 4. There's no long-term advantage of that. You just get to feel cool for a year when your 3-year-old can read. And feel like superior to other parents, because long-term there's no advantage. And so it's trusting that process. Like, you're not going to have an illiterate teenager because you're not going to let that happen.
Right.
Your kid's going to learn. And if they get to a certain age and they're struggling and they're not just picking it up, you're going to intervene.
Yeah.
Because that's your place as the parent, is to say, okay, they're struggling to learn this, so I have to figure out why. And I have to step in and help them. Do we need to read more together? Whereas I read the books to her, I point to the words so she begins to recognize. Do I need to be more intentional? Do we need to do something a little bit more formal? Is there potentially something like a dyslexia or something that's coming into the process and altering the way she's learning?
Yeah.
And so, like I said, it's really just about trusting the process, because like, you're not going to let stuff like that happen. You're not going to let your kid like grow up and never learn certain things that they need to know to function in the world. They may not know what the Magna Carta is. But they're going to find something as they grow older that they absolutely love, that sets them on fire. And they're going to have the opportunity to pursue that with every piece of them. And like, as an entrepreneur, that's so important to me, is for my children to grow up knowing that they can create and get paid for whatever fuels their soul. And so I model that for them, and then I give them the opportunity to search for that thing that will fuel their soul.
I like that.
You know, and so when they come of age, they can take their, you know, their savings accounts and they can go to college, or they can start a business. You know, or they can live off of it while they start a low overhead business, or whatever they need to do. Because again, it's about me allowing my children to become who they were created to be, and not me trying to engineer what I think the world expects them to be, or what I expect them to be to make up for my failures, or anything like that.
I like that. I like that a lot, actually.
Right. Welcome to, I always joke around, and I know this is like a stereotype thing, but I feel like since I'm a part of the stereotype group, part of the offended group, I can say it, you know, right? But I always joke around, there's like kind of 2 types of homeschoolers. There's typically like people who homeschool for religious-based reasons, and then there's like the weird hippies. This would be the weird hippie part.
I think I'm kind of a weird hippie in some ways.
Right. It's like very just like, let's just go dance in the woods and have circle time today, and share our feelings.
Yes.
You know, exactly. You know, what is your inner guide speaking to you today? You know, but I mean, that's who I am. And so it just made sense for me to, I mean, that's literally like the work that I do in the world. Right. And so it makes sense for me to use those same principles to raise my children.
Right. Absolutely. I love this. I love all of this. And I love that there's so many different options for parents to do what they feel is best for their kids, whether it's sending them to school of any sort or keeping them home and doing what, unschooling or a homeschool-based curriculum. I think it's awesome.
Yeah. And I think it's so important that parents just for me, I've always, like I said, I teach my kids to question everything. Don't just do things because you think that that's what's expected of you. Use your power as a parent to make decisions for your children, because there is public school, which may be a great option for you depending on where you live and your kids and everything. There are parochial schools. There are schools like your Montessori school. There are schools like Charlotte Mason schools. There are something called Sudsbury schools, which is basically like unschooling, but they go to a school every day to unschool.
Ooh,
and have teachers, right? I know the nearest one to me is an hour away. And so it kills me. I know they're hard to find. I think there are a ton in California though. So look that up, Sudsbury. But there's all different types of schools, be it a formal institution or be it homeschooling, where you can do school at home and you can do a K-12 or a charter school curriculum from home with your children instead of sending them every day. And everything from that all the way in through unschooling and the different things we talked about, using curriculums, not using curriculums, using fully boxed curriculums, piecing together each piece of curriculum and subject to meet your kids' needs individually, Charlotte Mason, all unschooling. What's most important is that you do what's best for your family and for your children. And I think that that's all we can ask, is that you are just conscious in your decisions.
That truly is. I mean, I think anyway.
Right. There's no right or wrong way. There's no way that's better than any other. There may be a way that's better for me and my family than another way, but that doesn't mean that my way that's better for me and my family is better than the way you're doing it for you and your family. And I think that that's sometimes where those mommy wars come into effect, that we feel so defensive of our own practices. And we're really all just, we're all just trying to be good moms and do the best by our kids, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, this has been so, so, so much fun. I love it. Before we hop off here, can you tell everybody where they can connect with you if they want more information or if they want to give you a follow and some love on social media?
Yes, I love having this conversation. And so I'm more than happy to have people slide on into my DMs anywhere. You can find me on Facebook at Kelly Mahalak. The web address, I think, is facebook.com/K Mahalak. That's Mahalak. And on Instagram, I am at Kelly Mahalak. And you can check out my website, I guess, too, would be www.kellymahalak.com. It's really very easy to find me.
Awesome. Awesome. This has been so educational and so enlightening. Thank you so much for sharing all of this knowledge and all of your experience with not just me, but with all of the listeners also.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.